Tonight at 6 on Alaska's News Source, the governor issues a big no to the education funding bill that would inform midnight to make a decision.
A major cut to a summer science and engineering program. The program leader says it has to do with federal cuts, not DEI crackdown.
And a emergency came over the weekend. Fish and Game explains what to do if you do find yourself in a bad situation.
And rain's on the way for many Alaskans. I'll let you know when and where and how much to prepare for.
First king, baby.
Ooh, that's right. Reeled into shore, the first king of the season has been caught at Anchorage's Ship Creek.
You're watching Alaska's News Source.
Good evening. Tonight, all eyes are on the Capitol after the governor vetoed a key piece of education funding earlier today.
Now, with just 2 days left until the end of the school year, Beth Verge continues following this developing story. Beth, what should Alaskans be watching for right now?
Well, Rebecca, John, we are awaiting a veto override vote. House Bill 57 is now on the chopping block after a formal veto by Governor Mike Dunleavy today, just before the statutory deadline. His argument being it doesn't contain enough policy, particularly policy that he wanted. Now, today was the final day he could veto or sign the bill into law. He chose the former, and this was part of his response today to the question, why should anyone believe that any comprehensive plan will ever pass?
We have to get out of this mentality of, we're not going to work together with the guy over there because they didn't like him in high school. This is about the future of the state. And I would hope that these folks that are in charge, I would hope these folks that are in leadership would be listening to this conversation. We're going to roll out I think a plan that, if it's adopted, will solve this issue so we can get out of this mess, to be honest with you. But in terms of how will they get to that point, I think their constituents are going to have to tell them they have to.
One of the reporters with boots on the ground and sitting in on that presser this afternoon is the Alaska Beacon's Corinne Smith. Corinne, happy to have you here to get some additional perspective on this. House Bill 57 is a key piece of legislation in terms of ed funding this year. So how did we get to this point? Because we know there was another ed funding bill that was vetoed earlier in the session, and now here we are again.
Yes, and glad to be with you today. So education funding was a major priority of many lawmakers, both the House and Senate majority caucuses headed into the session. Lawmakers even ran on campaign promises to to increase education funding last fall. And so they came with legislation, House Bill 69, which increased the base student allocation, the main bucket of permanent funding per student, by $1,000. And Dunleavy came down with a veto on that bill, saying that his policy priorities were not included. And he particularly has focused on policies related to charter schools and homeschool programs. And so lawmakers came back to the drawing board and worked on House Bill 57, which was on the chopping block, as you said, today. That bill had a lot more policy included. Some of those items were setting caps on classroom sizes, also requiring school districts to put policies in place around cell phone use. Some districts are already banning cell phones, others have not. And then also changing the rules around charter school applications, that process and the appeals process, and some other policy items, as well as a new task force to study some of the education policies that Dunleavy has put forward that are still under debate. And Dunleavy came back today and said that was insufficient. And in a press conference, he explained more about how he wants to see more policy items included, and he has really maintained that adding more funding to the base student allocation would not guarantee improvements in student performance and educational outcomes, and he really wants to see those policies put in place, specifically, like I said, around charter schools and homeschool programs, in order to get a bill across his desk, you could say.
Yeah, now real quick, Corinne, what are your main takeaways from the governor's comments on this bill today, particularly the answer to your question when you asked why some of his priorities not being included in this actually made it worth vetoing the entire bill?
Yeah, well, It's interesting considering the state's fiscal situation and a really like they're saying skinny budget this year. It's interesting that the kind of crunch points were not around the amount of funding and what the state could afford or those types of conversations. He's really repeating his calls for policy changes and specifically around open enrollment statewide so that students in any district could possibly enroll in a school anywhere in the state. And then also he wanted to see increased funding around homeschool programs per student funding for each homeschool student. So it's interesting. He's really emphasized those policy changes, and he promised to reintroduce them next year.
Well, Corinne Smith with the Alaska Beacon, thank you. We're looking forward to having you on again, hopefully later this week. We appreciate the time. All right, so a couple of key reactions right after the news of this veto broke. The National Education Association Alaska saying in a prepared statement that, quote, to veto not one but two bills this year to fund education is not only shameful and embarrassing, but it says, a blatant disregard of the governor's constitutional duties. The NEA Alaska then encouraged a veto override whenever that vote might happen. We're hearing similar from the state's largest school district, that is the Anchorage School District, which says the bill, quote, represents months of hard work, collaboration, and compromise across party lines and among education leaders statewide. The district saying it is deeply disappointed by this decision, adding that the bill reflects a balanced, forward-looking approach to education policy and responsible budgeting. There's a lot more to this. You can watch the governor's full press conference on our website. And Alaska's News Source also plans to stream tomorrow's joint session at 9 a.m. That is when lawmakers are scheduled to consider overriding the governor's veto of HB 57. John, Rebecca.
Anchorage police identified the officer who they say fatally shot a man last Monday in Mountain View.
According to APD, Officer Carter Mays, who's been with the department since June of 2019, fatally shot Utuva Alelua. After APD leaders say they pulled over the 41-year-old for a broken headlight off of Burgaw Street on May 12th. Police Chief Sean Case said when officers approached the vehicle, they saw a gun near Alelua's lap and say after officers gave commands, he was shot. The officer was also involved in another officer-involved shooting in 2022. On Wednesday, expect an update from police. And new at 6, no one from the Trump administration responding to our request.
It's very frustrating.
Funding was still
responding to our request for comment after UAA leaders from the Alaska Native Science and Engineering Program, known as ANSEP, blamed the sudden cut of their free summer STEM education program on federal cuts and a DEI crackdown.
Now, ANSEP's chief operating officer says the unexpected loss of the $2.5 million from the National Science Foundation means it's had to cut the summer academy. Comes after she says that UAA's Board of Regents asked ANSEP leaders to respond to an executive order terminating what the administration described as discriminatory programs and to remove affirmative action language. Officials say the program was open to all Alaska students, not just Alaska Native students.
It's law that all of our programs are open to all students. A student chooses to join a program based on, feeling welcome or feeling like they belong. And so that might be why a lot more Alaska Native students participate. But, we've never targeted Alaska Native students in terms of when we pick a student for a program.
And she says while certain website language has been changed, including some references to Alaska Native people, that does not impact the programs or the mission to serve Alaska Native communities.
Well, a woman and her dog were attacked by a moose at Kincaid Park on Friday. The Alaska Department of Fish and Game says the dog was off leash at the time of the attack, and the moose had a newborn calf with her.
Anchorage police say that both the woman and the dog had non-life-threatening injuries, but their current status is unknown. Fish and Game says moose are very aggressive after giving birth to calves, and that happens around this time of year, and it's important to know what to do if they charge.
The group did have a little bit of time between when the moose charged, and they did exactly the right thing. And the main point that we want to get across is if a moose charges, run, get behind something solid, a tree, a big rock, until that moose kind of calms down. Fish and Game also says please keep your pets leashed. So if you do encounter a moose,
you're more in control of your pet.
Smoke jumpers from the Alaska Fire Service had the first wildfire jump of the season on Saturday.
They contained the crooked fire that was threatening campers and heavy equipment. The fire reached 25 acres in the interior. They have since extinguished the fire.
Chief Meteorologist Melissa Fry has been tracking thunderstorms in the same area today.
And Melissa, are there other active fires in that area?
They are, yeah. We're really seeing wildfire season just getting started, but firefighters have been busy and just keeping an eye, monitoring a lot of these fires at this point. I want to show you where these are. Again, 5 out of the 6 active fires in the state are in the interior. We've already had 71 wildfires that were recorded and noted so far this year. 36 acres burned from those 71 fires. So again, things are ramping up. And yes, we are seeing lightning as we speak. Those thunderstorms developing just south of Paxson, right on the Richardson Highway. Again, lightning this time of year, it is dangerous just because it is warmer, it is drier. These storms fortunately containing some rain with them. So that's a good thing. Those cells pushing to the north. Also seeing another batch of thunderstorms beginning to develop just east there of Fairbanks. Now, north to the Brooks Range, completely different scenario. Winter storm warnings in effect for heavy snow on the Dalton Highway through Adigan Pass. We're talking 7 to 12 inches of snow developing there tonight, continuing through tomorrow evening. So traveling to the north, be prepared for those winter driving conditions. Otherwise, we're seeing relatively calm conditions across the state, but still holding on to that moisture and cloud cover. So as we look ahead to your Tuesday, you can expect not only clouds and Anchorage, but rain developing tomorrow evening. We'll see that into early Wednesday, and temperatures still just a little bit below average for this time of year. We'll see those scattered showers also developing in Fairbanks. Drier in Juneau in the mid-50s. Sun breaks back into Bethel, but a little bit cooler. Highs just in the mid-40s for you. Now we'll look at that full 7-day forecast, which includes Memorial Day weekend here coming up next.
Thanks, Melissa. Still ahead, we're getting a behind-the-scenes look at the first king caught at Ship Creek this season.
Yeah, details on what that lucky fisherman wins.
You're watching Alaska's news source.
All right, very exciting. The wait is over in Anchorage. The very first king salmon of the season has been caught.
It happened at 10 o'clock this morning. An almost 10-pound king was netted on the banks of Anchorage's Ship Creek. The fisherman also won a prize.
Oh, yeah. Let's see. Fishing gear, a season's parking pass, and paid entry into this year's Ship Creek Salmon Derby. It's still wait and see on how the returning salmon numbers will pan out. But until then, the owner of the bait shack has some advice on where to catch the early salmon.
The majority of these first fish come between the C Street Bridge and the railroad bridge down there.
C Street and the railroad bridge. All right, just over a week ago, when we asked him when should we expect the first king salmon caught on Anchorage's Ship Creek, he always says May 19th because it's his daughter's birthday, and this year he was spot on. Happy birthday, Miss Lincoln.
Thanks for listening. Click subscribe so you can get the latest podcast from Alaska's news source automatically. And stay up to date with breaking news and in-depth reporting available for free 24/7 with the Alaska's news source app.